The Ice King just might be one of the most interesting characters in all of animation. Welcome back to Villain Review, and I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about the Ice King, his best scenes, his backstory, and what score I'd give him 1 out of 10. I have reviewed over 190 villains, but will Ice King get the elusive 10 out of 10? Let's find out.
What had I said? What had I done when I wore this crown? All I know is I never saw Betty again.
When the Ice King is serving as the show's main antagonist, his only real goal seems to be that of stealing princesses to marry against their will. It sounds really bad, but all the guy wants is love, and while consent is always important, kids, the Ice King's passion for kidnapping seems to stem from a place of loneliness and genuine desire for love. It's a fun motive for a villain on a kids show, but just wait for this backstory. But first, let me recap some Adventure Time lore. The land of Ooo, as colorful and whimsical as it is, started off as a far more realistic world, very much in the same vein of the one we live in. But after mushroom bombs, which are implied to be nukes, go off, the whole world would be destroyed, leading to the radiation creating the land of Ooo. Before the bombs would go off, scientist Simon Pietrkov was studying to be an antiquarian. He lived happily with his fiancée Betty, whom he'd often refer to as his princess. He'd just have a great setup going. Eventually coming into possession of an ancient crown, Simon would begin to black out and hear whispers from the object, resulting in his sanity declining and his fiancée leaving him out of fear. The bombs would go off, and while the crown would make him one of the only human survivors, his sanity would continue to worsen along with his physical appearance. He'd eventually find a small vampire girl named Marceline, and together they'd navigate the apocalypse, Simon using the crown's powers of snow on the rarest occasions to help keep them safe. Every time he'd wear the crown, it would get harder and harder to hold on to that old identity until Simon would completely vanish, being replaced by the crown's new, insanity-fueled persona of the Ice King. He's easily one of the most developed characters in the show, and it is a masterclass example of how to elevate a silly villain into so much more. It's this kind of depth and maturity in Adventure Time that I think really makes it stand out among other shows like it. This character is not just good for kids, and adults can enjoy it too, it's just good, period. A great and interesting character regardless of the audience. Hell yeah, Ice King.
She's 13 years old now.
Oh, dang it! Well, I'm out of here. Goodbye, everyone.
Before we get back into the lore of Simon and the bombs, let's get back to the Ice King stuff. Because yeah, it's easy to say the backstory is what makes the character good, but that's far from true. You can take out all the Simon stuff, right, and the character's still great. Point A, dude's hilarious. All of his schemes, Gunter, and just that adversity to Finn and Jake leads to some of the show's funniest moments. As the only reoccurring antagonist in the show, his dynamic feels incredibly unique, and aside from being funny himself, he opens the door for the characters around him to be funny too. If you take Ice King out of the show, you lose all of his funny moments, but you also lose a ton of great ones for Finn, Jake, PB, and more.
You're grounded for 2 weeks.
You're grounded for 2 weeks.
3 weeks.
Oh, snap!
Part of the fact he's so clueless too about things also adds a great level of humor. Even the way he handles his own backstory is treated as a joke for a bit. When Finn and Jake finally find out about his past, he doesn't want them to find out because he's embarrassed of the fact he used to wear glasses. He's played perfectly by Tom Kenny of SpongeBob fame, and I think he's so stupid good in this role, it's crazy. He plays comedy really well, but we've been knowing that. What surprised me though is just how good he plays the dramatic sides of the character too. There are a lot of legit sad and dramatic moments in the story of Simon, and I think Tom Kenny is great in these ones too. The fact he's played with such seriousness makes Simon all that more interesting. And when he starts to become torn between his two personalities, it's an amazing performance. You might feel bad for the Ice King because of how sad and pathetic he is, but then later you feel bad for him because the story's just legit sad and tragic. The moments with Marceline are series standouts, and while I'm gonna touch on them a little bit later, the added context of Simon's past makes the Ice King an incredibly tragic and sympathetic character. I really doubt when the show started the creators had this backstory in mind, but it's one of the best examples I've seen in developing a main character into more than what we've known them to be. A lot of shows try it, some succeed, but very few pull it off as good as the Ice King does.
You're scaring me.
I'm sorry.
I could sit here and just start naming all of the Ice King's funniest moments, but we'd be here forever. He's in a ton of episodes and has at least one guaranteed laugh probably every time. Everything with Finn, Jake, Gunter are probably my favorite. It's great stuff, great laughs, one of the show's funniest characters. Let's get back to Simon for a bit though, because he has some of the show's best moments. Holly Jolly Secrets Part 2 is an awesome episode, finally getting our first real glimpse of who the Ice King was and just how tragic his story is. What I like about it though is that the show doesn't stop there. They continue to expand upon his story until the very end, and it's great. I don't know who the freaking genius was who decided to pair up Simon with Marceline, but give him a freaking medal, dude. Give him an award. Smartest move ever. It's important to pair the two up so we can actually see the kind of person Simon was before he turned into the Ice King. Yeah, we get the brief moments he documents, but that doesn't give us any info into the person he was, just what he's studying. He's thoughtful, caring, and seemingly everything the Ice King isn't, which just makes that transition worse. The episode Simon and Marcy is one of the best episodes of the show, giving us our best look into that relationship. The scene of him fighting to keep his sanity by singing the Cheers theme for Marceline, 10 out of 10. In fact, I'm not going to say too much more on it because I made a whole analysis of that scene alone. I'll leave that pinned in the comments so you can check that out after. I also love the scene though where Marceline is reading Simon's journals to him in hopes of reconnecting with him, but Ice King isn't capable in the slightest of remembering anything from his past life. Still, he eventually reads the journals back, thinking that they're just song lyrics, but just hearing him read his own words, it's incredibly touching. Love the relationship between these two, and I think it's important the show moved him away from the early season antagonist role. It complements his overall story and origin so much better. By the end, he actually considers Finn and Jake his friends, working with them to do some good things, even though he might not always be aware of it. I'm not going to ruin the whole thing, but by the end of the show, Simon Ice King, it's a hell of a redemption. Fantastic character.
I love you guys, but you don't love me, do ya?
You tried to kill us like 4 times.
He starts off as just a jerk for Finn and Jake to stop, but turns into arguably the show's best and most complex characters. He's hilarious, sympathetic, and perfectly portrayed by Tom Kenny, this being maybe my favorite performance of his. In my opinion, he is a textbook example of how to develop a side character into so much more in ways that are interesting and natural within the universe. I'm gonna give the Ice King a 9.5.
Hello, my name is Simon Petrikov. I am recording this tape so that people will know my story.
Thank you so much for watching. On my other channel, I ranked all the Adventure Time villains. Check that out. New villain review every single Monday. See you next week.
The Ice King?
I should go.